Welcome back to In the Midst. So today is going to be Preemie baby story number 2. So the other day we talked about my first, who was born at 26 weeks, and all that we got to watch God do, and just the way God provided and strengthened and protected him. And now he's 13 and a half. So today we're going to talk about my daughter, who is 6, and there's something on my glasses. That was weird. So our kids are 7 years apart, and that was not our plan. That was God's doing. We wanted our kids to be like 2 to 4 years apart. My little sister and I are 3 years apart. No, we're 4 years apart. My husband and his older sister are 3 years apart. We're 4, they're 3. So that's what we wanted, was that, 2, 3, 4 year mark. And that would have, that's what we thought would have worked. But the Lord had different plans. So we were trying, I was getting frustrated. I was getting, discouraged. It just wasn't happening. I had gone to 2 OBGYNs, I think. And the one that I went to last did everything. They did a 1-hour glucose test, a 3-hour glucose test, as if I were pregnant, to see, do you have diabetes? And maybe that's hindering conception. They did tons of blood work. My first OB just did TSH and kind of left it alone. But this one checked, the progesterone, the testosterone, the estrogen, all the things. And everything was within normal ranges. So they were like, we don't know what's going on. So I was left kind of with no answers. So we ended up moving to Colorado. The Lord moved us out there. Our son was 4.5, 5.5. And he was going into kindergarten. And I had just kind of gone through a lot of the emotions of, he's the only one that we're going to have. I have to be okay with that. What if we never have another one? There's nothing I can do about it. And then I went to, what if we foster? What if we adopt? What if we adopt out of the foster care system? And I'd actually started, so we were in Colorado about a year and a half, and I had started looking into the foster care system and adopting, and how does that work, and what's required, and how long is the process? What classes do we have to take? All this stuff. And as God would have it, we got pregnant. So I was going to the doctor. I found a new OBGYN out there, and they had started me on some medicine. Of course, again, all my blood work looked good, and they were like, we just really don't know. So we found out that I wasn't ovulating. So they put me on Clomid and a really high dose of progesterone. Made my body ovulate, do what it was supposed to be doing. My periods aren't normal anyway, so that was another battle we were fighting. I've never been normal or regular or anything like that. So they were trying to take care of all of it. We got pregnant. So I started that medicine in either January or February that year. And I believe it was June, maybe July, I'd gotten pregnant with our daughter. So I'm excited. I'm nervous. But I have that fear, that nervousness of, what if she's premature? I know it's been 7 years, but I don't know. So I told my doctor, I was like, okay, listen, at 20 weeks, I start having issues. I know it was only once. It's the only one I've had. I know it was 7 years ago, but I need you to listen to me. 20 weeks, you have to look at my cervix. You have to watch this. This is a big deal for me. He was great, and he was like, okay, it's going to be okay. We're going to keep an eye on things. You're going to be fine, whatever. And so he had actually ordered progesterone shots for me to take once a week. It was supposed to strengthen my cervix and just help me to be able to carry. So we started those around 16, 17 weeks. I go to the doctor once a week, get the shot, plus I'm going every 4 weeks for my regular checkups, all that. So nothing crazy. I'm getting the shots. We're taking them. We're doing okay. We're getting close to that 20 week, and I'm getting excited. I feel like we're having a girl. I'd always wanted a boy first and then a girl. And so we go, and sure enough, gender scan says, yes, you're having a girl. Everything looks good. She's growing, proportioned. All of her organs, her heart looks great, yada, yada. So I did not really enjoy that very long. She did all of that, put us in the room, and I was like, what about my cervix? Like, how does this look? What's going on? And so my doctor's looking at the pictures, and he said, she didn't really get a good view of it. So we're going to go back to the ultrasound room. We're going to do an ultrasound. We're going to look at your cervix. We're going to get all the measurements, and we'll let you know. So I go back in there, get that, go back to the room, and he said, I'm sorry, you're right. Your cervix is starting to thin, so we have to put you on bed rest. You're not in immediate danger, but we have to be precautious. We are going to continue to do your progesterone shots until delivery, and we're just going to watch things. And he said, I want you to come back once a week for 4 weeks till I was 24 weeks, and we're going to check your cervix again every week. Like, if something crazy happens, like, we have to know. So I said, okay. So I'm on bed rest. I'm not supposed to be doing a whole lot, not supposed to be walking a lot. I'm supposed to be, reclining, laying on my side, relaxing, all that stuff. And when you've got a, 5-6-year-old at home, I guess he was 6 then. That was a lot. We were homeschooling, and so I was thankful that, I didn't have a job that I was having to quit. We could homeschool at home. We did a lot of school in my bed just so I could be, laying the way I needed to be. And we went in at 20 weeks, no change. So I was pretty excited. We were praying about it, of course, and I was excited, and I was like, okay. 22 weeks comes, and my doctor is out of town. My husband had called me on my way to the doctor, asked how things were going. He was working HVAC service technician. So he was out, and he said, I'm right here in the Springs, and which is Colorado Springs. That's where we live. He said, when I get done with this call, it shouldn't really take long. When I get done with this call, I'm heading to Denver. So let me know how things go. I said, okay. And Denver is about an hour away, for those of you that don't know that. And so I go to the doctor with my 6-year-old with me. And we get in the exam room. This isn't, a general checkup. We're not getting a heartbeat and all that stuff. We're just looking at my cervix, right? So we get in the room, and they had what you could see on the screen. They projected it to like a flat screen TV on the wall, so I could see it. So I'm laying there, and she gets everything situated and in focus, and she doesn't really say anything, which I know she really can't, but I could see that screen, and I knew something was wrong. And I asked her, I said, why does my cervix look like that? Like, that's not normal. This isn't okay. Like, what is happening? I'm starting to panic a little bit. And she said, I have to go find the doctor. So I knew like something was wrong, because she couldn't tell me what was going on. Well, what was happening was my cervix was actually opening and funneling. So it was short, was thin, looked like we were headed to labor. And I asked her, am I in labor? Like, I'm not contracting. My water hasn't broke. I feel fine. She said, I have to go find the doctor. So she couldn't even tell me if I was in labor or not. So I was scared to death. So my doctor is out of town. She gets a different provider in the office, and she comes in, and the doctor said, I need you to go to labor and delivery right now. If you can find a babysitter, great. If you need to call somebody to come be with you, but you can't go home. Like, you are walking straight there. We're going to walk you through the hallway to labor and delivery, and we're going to get you taken care of. I could see on the monitor my baby was moving and she was okay, but I didn't know, like, no one's really telling me what's going on yet. So I call my husband in tears, and my 6-year-old's trying not to cry because mom's crying, freaking out. He doesn't really know what's going on. And so I called my husband, and I was like, please tell me that you are still in the Springs. He was like, yeah, for now. And I was like, okay, like, you can't go to Denver. Like, you have to come to the hospital. They're sending me to labor and delivery. And he asked what was going on. I said, I really don't know, but they're not letting me leave. I need someone to come get our son. Like, I can't. Like, I don't know what's going on. I just need you here. So he calls his boss, leaves work, comes up there. I think our pastor's wife maybe. Her and our pastor had come and got our son. They had kids his age, so I think they might have came and picked him up. And I just remember walking through the hallway scared. What if I lose her? And we didn't even have the name picked out yet. So I'm sitting. Whoever came and got our son brought food. Like, I remember Chick-fil-A was sitting over there. And so it probably was our pastor's wife. And so I remember thinking, like, I am so hungry, but I don't know if I can eat. And so they get our son, take him. My husband's there with me. And while I'm waiting on my husband to get there, they were starting an IV line for me. I asked the nurse, I was like, how long am I going to be here? And she said, probably 3 days. Okay, like, what is going on? And she said, we have to get labor stopped or the contraction stopped, something like that. And I thought, I'm not contracting though. Like, I'm not. And so she was starting an IV line for fluids. She wanted to do magnesium, which would have stopped the labor and contractions. Like, I've already been through that. And she was calling somebody for the steroid shots for baby's lungs. And the on-call doctor called and was like, what is going on? What's the, status of the patient? How's the baby? All this stuff. And she told them to stop what they were doing. She said, that baby is 22 weeks. That's not viability. We don't do this. We don't do preventative life-saving measures. Like, that baby's not going to live. And, if she goes into labor. So they stopped and they just got me comfortable, and I'm sitting there. My husband gets there, they come and take our son, whatever. And so that doctor comes over. Her office was kind of attached to the hospital, just like the other side of the parking lot. She was a high-risk OB. So she comes in and she's like, look, 22 weeks isn't viable. If we do nothing, you're going to go into labor. If we do something, you could still go into labor. So she wanted to place a cerclage. So she was basically going to tie my cervix closed. She said, if we do this, it is a surgery, a procedure. You could get an infection and go into labor. The cerclage could only hold a day, a week, a month, 6 months. We don't know. Like, there's no definitive answer. And you could go into preterm labor anyway. While I'm doing the procedure, because I have to tug on your cervix, I could accidentally break your water and put you into labor. There's your options. So feeling very bleak at the moment, because I was like, man, what do I do with that? I just looked at my husband and he said, if we do nothing, we know where this is headed. We have to at least try to prevent it. I said, okay, you're right. We'll do the cerclage. And she said, okay, I see your Chick-fil-A. We'll do the cerclage today after I close up at my office. It'll be like after 5. You can't eat until after this is done because it's a surgery. Okay. Telling a pregnant woman she can't eat is so hard, but I didn't. I think they let me have water. So we waited. She came back. She did the cerclage. Everything went well. And so, but while I'm sitting there, before the cerclage, I'm having a pity party because she doesn't even have a name. Like, we've known for 2 weeks it was a little girl, and we've wanted a girl for so long, and she doesn't have a name. Like, what if she's born and doesn't make it, and she doesn't even have a name? Like, I can't, like, that's terrible. So I'm having all the emotions. My husband is like, I don't care, pick a name. Like, I just, whatever. But nothing seemed right, and we couldn't agree on a name, so I was like, I don't know what to do. So we're sitting there, and my husband said something to the effect of, like, we waited, God waited this long and gave us a baby. He's not going to take her. And it was comforting in the moment, but in the back of my mind, I was like, of course he can. People have miscarriages and stillbirths all the time. Like, God gave those people those babies, and he took them back. Why wouldn't he take my baby back? So I was, going through all the what ifs. What if I don't get pregnant again because it was so hard? This was our last chance. I really wanted a girl. What if the next one's a boy and I don't get a girl again? All the things, right? And maybe it was a lapse of faith, but I was scared, and I don't know, I just was. So we get the cerclage done, and I have to stay a little while to make sure, make sure everything's okay and holding and whatnot. I don't remember if I spent the night or not. I might have. So I'm sitting there afterwards trying to rest. I'm a little uncomfortable. All the spinal tap's wearing off, and I'm just, not really okay. And I was sitting there, and the Lord just kind of broke through my pity party. And he said, haven't I told you to pray specifically? Yes. And I have. And he said, what are you praying for? And I said, full term. Why not? And he said, you don't carry full term. What are you praying specifically for? How far? How many weeks? And so, of course, I said 40. And he said, you don't carry full term. So remember when Lot and Moses were splitting up and, Canaan or Sodom and Gomorrah was going to be destroyed, and Moses is like, well, what if there's 40 righteous? What if there's 30 righteous? What if there's 5 righteous? Whatever. And he's kind of negotiating with the Lord. That's what I did. And I said, okay, well, Lord, they said if she's born before 37 weeks, practices that she has to go to the NICU and I can't take her home. I just want to take my baby home. And he said, you will, but not at 37 weeks. Like, what are we praying for? So I got to 35, and God said 35 weeks. That's what we're praying for. Okay. So I text a really good friend of ours. I text my pastor's wife, and I said, God said 35 weeks is what we need to be praying for, so will you pray with me? And they were like, yep, that's what we're going to pray for. So as I'm sitting there at exactly 22 weeks, I've only ever been pregnant to 26. 35 seems really far. Like it's going to be a miracle to get there, okay? And then God, there's 4 more weeks. Like, God can do whatever he wants. If he says, forget it, we're going full term, then I can. He will. So 35 was the week that we were praying for and we were, going with. So I get home, still on bed rest. There's really not much I can do. We are homeschooling, so we are trying to finish up, before the baby comes, because I know she's going to be born early. We're trying to get school done, ahead of time. So I don't have to try to homeschool and, be in the NICU and go back and forth and not get any sleep and all that stuff, right? So we're like, okay, no big deal. So we're praying about it. Well, I go back to my doctor at 23 weeks. And I don't remember if I saw my doctor or the high risk, but I was seeing both of them for a little bit. And 23 weeks, cerclage is holding. There's no problems. 24 weeks, same thing. Still on bed rest because this thing could go at any day. Like, we don't know. And so finally I told my doctor, I was like, listen, if I'm on bed rest and I'm not supposed to be, active, doing anything at all that could cause an infection or irritate my cervix, whatever, then stop doing the exams. Like, I don't want any more exams. I'm 24 weeks. That's viability. God said 35 weeks is when I'm going to have this baby. I don't want any more ultrasounds. And he said, okay, that's fair. We can do that. Unless something happens or changes or we feel like, okay, there's a need, then we're going to stop. I said, okay. So I still had my weekly injections. I still had, regular checkups and monitoring the baby and, all that stuff. So we're okay. And we're getting closer to the day, 35 weeks, no big deal. And there was some thoughts that I had of, I'd really like my water to break at home because, I feel like the Lord is saying this is our last baby. So I'm not going to get that again. It didn't happen with our first. And it did. So at 27 weeks, I'd started having Braxton Hicks contractions. Never had those with my first. So it was like the day I turned 26 weeks or 27 weeks. They were there and every day. Well, the doctor's rule was 6 in an hour. You need to come in or go to labor and delivery, get checked out, all that stuff. So we do that kind of a lot. And 2-3 times a week. Going to the doctor, I'm going to labor and delivery, getting monitored. Everything's fine. The cerclage is holding. Your cervix isn't thinning. So finally, I don't know how far along I was. I told my doctor, I was like, okay, listen, I understand the rule. This is just what my body's going to do. I don't want to come up here every time. I'm not in labor. I'm fine. So they give me a pill in the ER in labor and delivery that stops my contractions. I know you can give me that pill. Will you do it? And he was really hesitant, and he was like, you're kind of high risk still. You're preterm, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, listen, but that stops the contraction. So they give me one. I'll take one. If it doesn't work in a certain amount of time, if I keep contracting, if they get worse, whatever it is, then I'll come. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm not saying I don't want to be seen, but this is just this is a lot of money. This is a lot of time. I've got a 6-year-old at home. Like, I'm supposed to be on bed rest, not in labor and delivery every other day. I said, so if it doesn't work, however many you say I'm allowed to take, if it doesn't work, I'll come in. If my water breaks, I will come in. If I am bleeding, I will come in. But just a few contractions, the medicine makes it stop and I'm fine for a day or two. Like, can we not? And he was like, okay, like, I agree to that. Fine, you can do that. I said, okay. So Saturday night, my husband and I, and our son, we were at our church filling up the baptistry. It was our first baptism Sunday. So we're timing it. How long does it take? It was a portable baptistry. So we needed to know how long does it take. That way for next time we know, we only need to start at, 9, not 4 in the afternoon, whatever. So we're up there. And my husband and our pastor are walking around, checking things out, talking about the facilities, whatever. And I'm in charge of watching the clock. So I'm sitting like I'm supposed to be, watching this baptistry fill up and watching the clock. It's been this long. It's went up this much in this amount of time, whatever. And so I'm sitting there hanging out and I start contracting. And I was like, okay, we're counting. No big deal. They're not like super, super strong. We're okay. That day, I think I'd spent the day actually nesting. It was that day or the day before. Someone was coming to clean our house, so I didn't have to do that. Another family in our church had paid for a friend of theirs that owned her own cleaning business to come once a week clean our house. So she did all the showers and mopping and vacuuming and dusting and all that stuff. I still did the laundry. My husband and I, whatever, did the laundry, changed the sheets on the bed, stuff like that. So I'm doing all the things this day. And I'm feeling good. Like, I feel so good. And I had texted a friend. I was like, it would be crazy if I went into labor. Like, now that I'm nesting, it's coming. And she was like, don't say that. And I was like, I'm just letting you know, like, this is everything I've done today. And so we're at the church. I'm starting to contract, and I thought I overdid it. Oh well. So I go take a pill. I've got 7-8 contractions in an hour, about 45 minutes. So I go take a pill and come back and sit down, watching this thing fill up. They slow down a little bit, but they're still coming. And I'm 35 weeks today at that point. And so I thought, Lord, you said 35. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Contractions slow down, ease up a little bit. I'm like, okay. So we get home, take a shower, get in bed. Told my husband, like, I'm contracting a little bit, but it's okay. It's not a big deal. It's not, 6 in an hour. I'm not taking the medicine. We're okay. We're 35 weeks today. Remember, 35 weeks. That's what we prayed for. And here we are. So this is where God just comes through. 35 weeks in one day. That next day was a Saturday morning at 1 o'clock in the morning. My water broke at home. And so I was getting out of bed, and my husband he woke up every time I move. So he woke up. And he said something, like wanting to have a conversation. That's what I remember thinking, was like, we're not talking right now. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to go to the bathroom. I don't know. And he was like, are you okay? And I was like, yes. Like, I really just have to pee. Like, I'm okay. So I walked down the hallway. It's not very far. My water breaks as soon as I get into the bathroom on the hardwood floor. So my water breaks, and I'm just kind of standing there confused, in shock. And I was like, man, I don't do. There's supposed to be a friend of ours that's taking pictures, that's supposed to be up there. Another friend's my labor coach. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, I can't call these people. They said they would be there. Like, people, babies come at any time of day. And so I'm like, I can't call these people at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I do finally end up using the restroom. And so I get back in the bedroom, and my husband was like, are you okay? And I was like, no, it's time. Like, my water just broke. And he was like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. Like, I got up to go pee, and my water broke, and I still had to pee. So I peed, and there's still water. Like, it's time. Like, we have to go. So I called the hospital, already had our bags packed. Called the hospital, woke up our son, grabbed his little tablet, grabbed the phone chargers, all that stuff, and get in the car, get in the truck. It's March 18th in Colorado Springs. There's ice and snow on the ground. It's freezing cold. And we get to the hospital. It was like 10 minutes up the road. It wasn't far. It was like the same road we lived on, just got you there. So we get there, and it was the funniest thing. My husband grabs a wheelchair, helps me get out of the truck, into the wheelchair, and he said, I'm going to go park the truck. I'll be right back. It's okay. So he wheeled me in to the ER in front of the nurse's station and left. So he walked back out to go put the truck up because we're parked, right at the door. And that poor lady at the nurse's station was scared to death. She was like, what's going on? And I was like, I'm in labor. I'm 35 weeks in one day. I'm in labor. And she was like, is that your husband? Is he coming back? And I was like, yes, he's coming back. Our son's in the car. He's just parking the truck, whatever. She's like, okay. So she called labor and delivery. She's like, someone's coming to get you. I said, okay. So I'm sitting there just kind of hanging out. And my husband comes back in, grabs me, walks me up, and she's like, do you know? And he's like, yep, know where we're going. We're here all the time. Not a big deal. So we get into labor and delivery, and I'd called the people that were supposed to come, be up there. A friend of ours that was doing the pictures. The friend of ours that was my labor coach was like, I can't call out of work, but I'll be off at, whatever time. I'll be up there. I said, okay. So I am waiting, and we're just hanging out. No big deal. Well, they put me in a triage room first, and they're trying to get the cerclage out because it's held this whole time. But I'm in labor, I'm contracting now. And so they're trying to get it out, without hurting the baby, without it tearing my cervix, all that stuff. So long story short, everything goes well. This was 1 o'clock in the morning when my water broke. 4:10 in the afternoon, 35 weeks in one day, our daughter was born. She was 5 pounds, 10 ounces, 19 and a half inches long, chubby, healthy. She was actually breathing on her own. They were doing a little blow-by oxygen support while they sit at the table. No. But she was fine. So they did take her to the NICU. We were only in the NICU for 9 days. She came home. That she was never on a ventilator like our son was. She did have to come home on oxygen though. Her heart valve closed, and a few months later, we found out that she did have acid reflux and was on the same medicine again, the same medicine our son was, but that was it. No concerns with her eyes, her weight gain, her eating, no surgeries, nothing like that. So again, we got to watch God work through this pregnancy when we've got more information, more, we have our bearings more of like, okay, what to expect, what's going on. He very clearly said to me 35 weeks is what I needed to pray for. I knew I wasn't going to go into labor before then. 35 weeks in one day. She came just as God has promised. It wouldn't be before that 35 weeks. My water did break at home, which is one of those little things that I, kind of wanted in my heart. I don't remember ever praying specifically for that. That was just one of those things that God gave. Another one of the little things that kind of wanted in my heart was I was debating, do I want an epidural? Do I want to do this naturally? Like, I know I can. My body is made to do this. Women do it all the time. But man, that epidural is pretty cool, So I was going back and forth. And I wanted to walk through my labor because I was like, if I can walk, like it's distracting, it's going to help. I want to walk through my labor, do this naturally, blah, blah, blah. So we get in there and she can't get the cerclage out. So I asked for an epidural and I said, I know I can relax, not be in pain. I'm contracting and you're trying to cut this cerclage off my cervix. Like I can't, I was in labor. My baby was already descending. So she was actually pushing her head out of the way, trying to hold her off of my cervix to cut this cerclage, which was really basically kind of like a zip tie. I know that sounds weird, but that's the best way I can describe it. So she was like, yeah, we can. So she moves me out of this little bitty triage room to my labor room, gets me the epidural. I get relaxed. 2 seconds, she's got that cerclage out. And she said, we can turn the epidural off or we can leave it on and you can just relax. And I was like, we're not really that far. We're like, 3-4 centimeters right now. So for now, I'm just going to leave it on. I'm going to sit here. Like, I don't want to walk this whole time. Just want to sit here and chill out. So I did. And it actually slowed down my labor. My contractions stopped completely for a couple hours. They ended up having to give me Pitocin, which I didn't want, but they did. Because, risk of infection and all that stuff. Your water's already broken. Baby needs to come out. So they were changing my positions, using the ball between my legs to try to get me, labor progressing again and stuff, which moved my epidural. So it had gone all to one side. So they came and moved the catheter. They did a trauma bolus, all that stuff. And it didn't work. So I still felt, if not all, nearly all of the labor, the contractions, the pushing, all of that. So God kind of, he was like, yeah, you kind of wanted this. So here you go. So I got to experience that. So that was really cool. So yeah. So in simple things that we take for granted every day. And again, I don't know why I'm sharing this. I just feel like someone needs to hear this. Maybe your baby's in the NICU. Maybe you're pregnant. Maybe you are, at risk for preterm labor. Maybe you're a high risk patient. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what God is going to do with this, but I feel like I have to share it. So whatever it is that you're going through, if God has given you his word, if he's given you a promise, if he has said, pray for this, don't disregard that. Okay. I would have carried to 35 weeks. I really believe I would have carried to 35 weeks in one day, whether I prayed for it or not. But in praying for it, I was being obedient to the Lord, and I got to see him work on my behalf. He doesn't always tell us. He doesn't have to say, this is what you're going to pray for. This is what's going to happen. He doesn't have to. Okay, he's God. He can do whatever he wants. But sometimes he gives us that. And he says, kind of, this is what I'm going to do. I want you to pray for it, and I want you to watch. I want you to see what I'm doing. And in little things that we take for granted every day, just being pregnant, just having healthy babies, not having to go to the NICU, not having a high-risk pregnancy. Not everybody has that. So when your pregnant friend says, hey, will you pray for this? Don't go, oh, you'll be fine. People have preterm babies every day. People are high risk every day. People are put on bed rest every day, okay? So things like this, they're a big deal to your pregnant friends, okay? Or to yourself. If you are that friend with the pregnant friend and she's like, hey, I really need you to pray for this with me, do it. Don't disregard what she's asking. That puts us living in obedience. It strengthens our faith. It's where God wants us to be. So it helps us to depend on him, okay? That's what we're supposed to be doing. But now that's a story that I have, a testimony that my kids have of even when they were in the womb, God was working, even in what, the doctors said, this really could go either way. God protected and God provided. And I know not everybody has the same story, but pray about it. Just trust the Lord, okay? That's really all I got. I really don't know why he wants me to share this, what he's going to do. Maybe this is just an encouragement to someone that, God is still working. God is still answering prayers. God is still on the throne. God is still God. He wants us to pray specifically. He doesn't say that in his word just to fill up space, okay? So pray specifically. Take the time to get alone with God, meet with him in prayer, and ask, what it is that's on your heart, whatever he's told you to pray for, what you're wanting him to do, just ask. So until next time, stay in the word, stay close to the shepherd, and let him lead you in paths of righteousness.